Hey everybody!
Hey everybody!
So you know who we are, and we'd like to introduce you to the Miltons. These folks right here have been through a whirlwind of emotion and drama and scandal in the state of Delaware that a lot of people haven't even heard of. And when they reached out to me, I immediately knew this was something that I felt very strongly about we should be talking about. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and introduce their babies, but also the specific baby that we'll be talking about today.
Hey, Delaware. My name is Shauna Milton.
I am her husband, Dwayne Milton.
And we have 3 children, Bailey, Bradley, and Maxwell Milton. And Bradley is our daughter who has gone through this traumatic situation.
Yes.
So some people watching have heard about legal kidnapping through the story of the former American Idol contestant whose 2 children were legally kidnapped in Florida. They have since, I think, gotten both children back. The youngest was only gone for about a week or 2 weeks, and the oldest was gone for almost 8 months.
You want to explain kind of,
Yeah.
because I don't think everyone's aware what, like, even when you say legal kidnapping, like, what does that
Right,
mean?
I know,
So-
because I want y'all, like, this is
Yeah.
insane. Could you explain it to the people?
Sure. So essentially, like when you think of kidnapping, you're thinking of like a stranger randomly taking a child, but this is actually happening within our medical systems. So someone can go to the doctor and say, hey, my child is sick. Can you, further investigate or treat? And the doctor may say it's one thing and the parents may say it's another and request a second opinion. And then the medical providers will then follow through with CPS and open a case and take your child from you. Or it could be your child has like a rare disease or something and they're presenting with different symptoms, and the doctor may see the physical aspects of it and blame the parents and then follow through with a CPS case and take their children. So they're legally taking children under the guise of suspected abuse or child neglect.
So can you give us a walkthrough of how this happened to you and your family?
And really, like, as much as you can, and not, I don't want to push anyone past their comfort zone, but like,
Right.
really give us like it started here and this is where we are. I mean, if we need to break in, we definitely will, but like, just give us the whole story, please.
Oh, also, how old are you?
I'm 36.
I'm 33.
And they cute, y'all. Like, I call them the Tyler Perry couple.
She
like,
definitely
This
did.
can happen to anyone. This isn't just, I just want to say, as they're telling their story, this can happen to anyone. So please pay attention because it's really important.
Right.
And that was the main thing. Like she said, it can happen to anyone. So my background is in social work. I'm a licensed master social worker, and then I also have an MBA in healthcare administration. And I used to work with the doctors that accused us of neglect.
Wow.
So I'm like, they know, me professionally. They know my work ethic. They kind of know me personally, on a more intimate basis by working with me. So they know there's no incidences of abuse. But if it happened to us, it can happen to anybody, and especially those that don't have the resources to fight back.
Right.
So it started when Bradley was 6 months old, and she was having issues with moving her bowels. So, I'm like, well, I'm feeding her food. I'm seeing it going in, but it's not coming out. Like, what's going on? And she's already naturally small for her age. All 3 of our children, they have this issue where they eat a ton, but it just doesn't physically show.
comes out.
Like, they're just small. So I called the doctor. I was just like, hey, she's eating, but she can't go to the bathroom. So they followed through and scheduled an appointment and said, just bring her in and give her juice. So that was concerning, because I'm like, well, you said with our oldest, don't give her juice, because that'll cause her to lose weight. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So we'll give the juice. Wasn't working. Bring her to the doctor's appointment, and they're like, yeah, we're concerned about her weight. And I'm like, well, what about the constipation? She still has not gone. And it's now 2 weeks later, and she has a bowel movement. So you can imagine, when you can't go, you're like, let me get some prune juice, some raisin bran, something. I'm so uncomfortable. So I could imagine with her.
We tried everything.
We really
tried
did.
everything.
So they wanted to start weight checks. So that was anxiety
Still not
provoking.
addressing the...
No.
The actual constipation.
Right.
And continue with the juice, and then we started giving her over-the-counter like glycerin suppositories to put in her butt,
Ugh.
which that was a nightmare.
Okay.
So okay, we had to go back, I think a week or so later, still having issues with the constipation, and they were only concerned with the weight, but they did diagnose her as failure to thrive. So you already know how it is when they slap a label on something. Now there's a level of follow-up, but of course, something like that, that's pointing a finger at us.
Right.
So we continue with weekly weight checks. They were just weighing her. We're still saying she's constipated. We're feeding her. We understand that if she's eating and she's not able to excrete it, more than likely she's going to get full and she's not going to gain weight. Can you please check to see what's going on with the constipation? Refused. So it continued for about...
Did they give you any reason as to why they wouldn't check that when that was kind of your initial reason for coming in the first place? Like, what was their response? You know what I mean? Like,
They
just kind of just gloss over it?
Yeah, they overlooked the situation. They wasn't trying to hear our needs and everything. And from there, we were just trying to find the best way to help our child and a solution, but we couldn't have one, so.
Yeah, it was evident that they were trying to say we weren't feeding her, because it was like, well, you know, how much are you giving her and what are you giving her? And, you know, we made our food, so we didn't buy her store-bought products, so I knew exactly what was going in, you know what I mean?
Are you vegan?
I was a vegetarian at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were doing everything possible. She was breastfed. So I'm like, most people wouldn't do all this stuff.
Right.
And I was a full-time, you know, working mom, so why would I not feed my child? But we continue with the
Or
appointments.
follow up with appointments.
Right, and I called you for help. That don't make sense.
Right.
Continue with the appointments. So in March, they said she needed to be inpatient because they were just so concerned with her weight. So I was just sitting there like, at the time she was in the appointment, you know, drinking a bottle, and it was formula. So I'm like, you're watching her eat, you know she does eat.
Right.
Okay, whatever. So we admitted her that night, and they did observation. So just watching me feed her, weighed her diapers before and after, waited for her to poop. So I'm sitting here like, well, if it's such a dire need, are we going to treat her, do something? Like,
Right.
Right, what's the next step?
Right, exactly. So we ended up discharging her against medical advice, but I said to the treating physician, we'll follow up with our PCP. So we did a week later, continue with the weight checks every single week. They did lab work. Everything was fine except like one level was slightly low, but nothing to suggest that something medically was wrong with her other than the constipation.
And she still hadn't gone.
So we were giving her an enema every single day.
But would she go with the enema?
She would, but
we
it
used
was...
to have to squeeze her, like
Her
we used to
belly.
fold her in
Yeah.
half just to have her, yeah.
And it wasn't like, oh, she had to go. It was like, Aretha was living with us. She was hollering and screaming every time she had to go. The other, our oldest child was like, Mommy, you know, it was just anxiety provoking for everybody. And every time I breastfed her, she would try to move her bowel. So that's at least 6 times a day that she's trying to go and can't.
And she's like notably uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Very
Yeah.
uncomfortable, yes.
And she's 6 months?
So by that point, she was what, 8, 9 months?
Nine, I
So it was
think
just
nine.
like progressively getting worse.
Yeah.
So finally, we had another inpatient stay. Well, before we even got there, they said, we'll do an endoscopy to see what was going on internally. So I'm like, finally, like, you know, somebody's listening because this is getting crazy. She started vomiting, which she's never had any GI issues, no acid reflux, no nothing.
Yeah.
So that's what they told us. We'll do an endoscopy and, you know, blah, blah, blah type of situation. Same thing, you know, we're more concerned with her weight and we understand the constipation is an issue. We'll give you another stool softener. Okay, so we go to the
That's
hospital.
irritating.
Extremely
Hearing
irritating.
it.
Like,
Very.
right, we were there every single week since February, so it's now in May and we're still doing weight checks and
So
nothing
this is
else.
over the 3-4 month period, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every single week. And they will always say, you know, if she didn't gain enough, they would have to document this and she'll possibly have to be inpatient for a longer time.
And
Okay.
what are you noticing with her as time is passing?
She was noticeably like uncomfortable. She wasn't moving. Like, you know, most babies are kicking their legs or squirming or something. You could leave her in a position and she would just be sitting there for hours. She wouldn't say anything.
She was very small, wasn't growing at all.
Hair was thin.
Yeah, very thin hair.
We used to call her management. That was our nickname for her because she was always so like serious and stoic and just,
Yeah.
so that was her nickname. And we didn't know. Sis was trying to hold on because she had no
Right.
energy,
She
like
didn't know-
nothing.
yeah.
But
And
yeah.
how were y'all? How were y'all coping in that
It
time?
wasn't good at all.
Yeah.
Sometimes we was bumping heads.
Yeah.
You know, but we just trying to stay strong for her as we could, but it wasn't a good time.
Were you getting any indication at this point that, I guess, the hospital like had a real quote unquote, I don't know how to say it, issue with you guys? Like, did you feel anything sort of coming at this point, or you're just like this? Did you just feel uncomfortable, or you're just kind of going through the motions, like hoping to solve the problem, and it's not going the way you want, but you don't expect anything big to kind of hit you from left field?
I was expecting it, to be honest. It's just the language of.
Because you're a social worker.
Right. So
Like-
I'm watching, just like they're watching me, I'm watching everything they're
Like,
doing.
what kind of red flags were you seeing? Because other people might be seeing
Yeah.
these
Right.
flags and aren't aware of them.
she
You know what I'm
said-
saying? If you can remember.
So one doctor had said to us, because I kept saying, look at us, we're small people, and at this point I done had 2 kids, I lost all the weight. Why would you expect our child to be this huge,
Chunker,
baby?
right.
So they were just like, well, if a child is eating, they'll visibly grow, And I was like, well, we're not the same. We have to go to the gym to
Right.
gain weight. And they were like, well, that's apples and oranges. That has nothing to do with it. We're talking about how she is on the growth chart.
And I'll say, my child has always been, my oldest daughter, has never been on the growth chart.
And my
Like, never.
babies have always been small. I mean,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like
right.
from
Everybody doesn't
day
feel the
one,
same.
I've never had a sense of like anything that you guys have dealt with, like that was on the way. Like, we were never even questioned. And I'll be honest, because this is, I think, a large part of the discussion and the problem. My wife is white, and my kids my son has razor straight hair. So I can't help but put that against your situation and wonder if it would have been different if my children didn't present differently. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Because one of my best friends at the time, she's Caucasian. She was taking her son back and forth to the hospital because he was sick. And a lot of times she would say, yeah, I would tell him to do this and do that, advocating for him. And I was like, I'm sorry, but this is very uncomfortable for me to hear this, because you're able to advocate with no medical,
Yeah.
background or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
And it's okay. But here we are, I'm advocating for my daughter, and my mom's a nurse, I'm a social
wow.
worker, and our children are being taken away from us.
Right.
Yeah, it was just very unsettling. They were even saying I needed to see like a lactation consultant because they were concerned maybe I didn't have enough calories in my breast milk. And I'm like, you see, she's gaining weight.
She's not pooping.
Right.
Like, what? Address the poop.
Yes.
Oh,
definitely.
God.
And then write down like exactly what I was feeding her and trying to get me to put more things into her food because,
But,
So I was like, well, if I was giving her Takis or something like that, that
it'd
would
be
be
different.
Exactly.
Right.
But
right.
yeah, she
Crushing
is
up
breastfed.
Cheetos and
Yeah.
putting it in her bottle. Jesus.
So it was just stuff like that and how they would look at me and just always questioning everything I did.
Yeah. So when did you first find out that legal action or that the state was getting involved?
It was after her second inpatient stay. So remember I said that they were going to do an endoscopy to see what was going on internally. Well, come to find out, they had no plan of doing that. They wanted to insert a feeding tube. Yes. And we found that out when we got there. And I was like, you brought us here under false pretenses.
Right. I mean, okay.
Right.
Keep going, because that I've never. That's
'Cause
crazy.
Now, when Yar had her issue with her bowel,
Mm-hmm.
they inserted a feeding tube for medicine, and they told us every step of the way. Like, they told us the whole rundown, even before it happened.
Wow.
So the fact that you're saying they told you one thing and then did something completely different is mind-boggling.
That's wild. Like that.
Like, they told us hours before they was even considered.
I've
like,
never had an appointment anywhere where I go, like for me, for my kids, I've never heard of that before,
Right.
where you
Right.
are going in to do this and
One
they
thing,
do
Right.
something
do
different.
something else.
That's
Right.
I've never
and
heard
then
that
lied
before.
in our medical record and say that they had a conversation with us, and we said, okay, we agreed to doing it. And then, of course, when we heard it out at the hospital, they're like, oh, they're being non-compliant now because we talked about this before, saying that she needed this, and they're disagreeing. But that's when they called. It was the same thing. She was inpatient. They were weighing her diapers before and after she peed. She still didn't produce a bowel movement. Basically, observing me breastfeeding, weigh her before and after to see how much she would gain. And I said to them, she's not sleeping, she's not eating like she normally would. She's probably going to lose weight, which she did.
Yeah.
So they try to use that. She took in, I think, 65% of her caloric needs while she was there. So the dietitian came in and said, well, she doesn't need a feeding tube. Like, that's only, I think it was 3 ml she needed every 3 hours in order to gain weight. And I'm like, well, I told you she's dropping feedings. Like, that's what she would have eaten.
Yeah.
But they still called DFS because we left the hospital. But I told them we were leaving. I told them we were going to follow up and get a second opinion. So it wasn't just like, you know.
So what was your reasoning for leaving? Like, why?
Because they weren't doing anything and she was getting worse.
Okay.
So by that point, it was just the vomiting was just nonstop.
At the hospital?
At home. So I could tell she wasn't taking in much. It just seemed like whatever I would give her, which wasn't a lot, she was.
And what hospital was this?
AI DuPont Hospital. So we started out at Bex Woods for primary care, and by that point we had switched to Jessup Street because that's the office where I used to work, thinking, oh, they know me, like they'll get to the bottom of it. But it was the same thing, weighing her every week. If she didn't gain enough, we were always starting with, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to tell DFS, you know, what's going on type of thing.
How is that, and even, I'm sorry.
That was my thought.
Like, how do you go from the child is having some issues to we calling the po-po on y'all? Like,
Right.
that doesn't make sense. There's always something that could be done further to help, even if it was maybe y'all needed help.
Right.
You know, maybe dive into what's going on in the family life to see what could be changed, you know? Like, I've had conversations with doctors that have suggested, okay, well, maybe if the kids got up a little earlier and you did breakfast at this time, like, why all of a sudden jump to reporting you?
Exactly, because it was quite clear what they thought it was. We
Yeah.
weren't feeding her. And we even had someone say, we're not concerned with the quality of the food, we're concerned with the quantity. And I was like, you really think we're making her food, I'm breastfeeding, and I'm like, oh, no, that's enough. Like,
And you have other babies
Right.
running around that are perfectly normal,
Right.
just living their life.
Right.
Wow. So how did you find out?
after the next day when we got home, someone called from DFS and said, hey, I have to come out to your house. And I was like, in regards to what? And he was like, well, I can't talk about it over the phone. I was like, well, I'm sure I know what it is. So that day he came to our house and did a visit. So I explained everything that was going on. I explained how our oldest, which is crazy, they were almost identical. Even though Bradley was having those issues with gaining weight, she and Bailey were like almost identical.
On the chart, yeah.
Wow.
Yes. So I'm like, you have our oldest daughter's growth chart. Just look at it to see what this pathology is. And they refused.
What were they looking into when they came to the house at that point? Like, what kind of stuff were they trying to see? Like,
Our living situation.
Yeah, like,
so they checked us.
right.
Making sure that everything was
On the up and
copacetic.
up.
Yeah, that we had everything.
Like running
ready
water,
for
food.
it. Okay.
Oh my God.
They
Food
checked
in
her
the refrigerator.
room.
Yeah, how their living situation was, and
They went to Bailey's daycare to do a check on her. And then he just explained that it was a tough situation and he would have to discuss it with his supervisor.
Oh my God.
what were his concerns? What was tough about it at that point? You
Because
understand?
he didn't see anything, and
Yeah.
I was showing him pictures of Bailey and Bradley and literally twins. So he's like,
Did he give any like explanation as to like why he was there? Like, what was he supposed to be finding that would make this a problem? You know what I'm saying? Like,
he said because of what the doctors were saying, he just wants to make sure that we're following up with the doctors. And I was like,
They're obviously, we
Right,
go every
hello.
week.
Right.
We live there.
yeah. And that's exactly what I said. We lived there. And I was like, I had a feeling that, they were going to open a case. But and he said, well, there's always been a case. That's why I'm here. So we found out later they had called 3 times on us.
wow.
Yeah.
Had you, and I'm gonna be careful, had you ever had any outbursts in the hospital or the primary care or over the phone?
everything
No.
was strictly professional. Kept her cool in every situation that we went in. So
And with me, I will shut down before I respond. And naturally, I think just because of what I do for a living, a lot of times I'll go in and just observe.
Because you've seen
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, people's true intentions are going to show. So I just want them to be able to talk themselves into a hole. So one, that I can document. And 2, we can see what's really going on type of thing. So now we've never raised our voice. We had a doctor actually come out and was yelling at us like, what is going on here? You guys aren't taking this seriously. And I'm sitting here thinking like, I don't know who you are, first and foremost. Secondly, if you were to be treating my child, I definitely would not entrust you to do that behind closed doors if you're talking to us that way.
Right.
And thirdly, where's your bedside manner? Like, hello?
Right.
It was just like crazy.
So the person comes from the agency and they say it's going to be a tough. Like, what happens from that point? So
So after that point, it was me constantly following up with him. So he
Okay.
was supposed to call me back, he didn't. So I'm calling him to figure out what's going on, and he's kind of like in limbo. He did say that he was going to petition to have the case closed, but that
Okay.
didn't happen because we had to continue with the weight checks, and she was losing weight. Like she would go up and get like full and all that stuff, and then kind of drop.
And you're still doing suppositories, enemas?
They actually told us to stop doing the enemas.
Yeah.
Because you actually, I understand why, because
Yeah.
it messes with the.
And that's what I was telling. I'm concerned with like, okay, she won't have the sensation to move her bowels if we're constantly inserting something and
Right.
bacteria and all that, but you're not addressing the issue. This is the only way she can go.
She's stretching out her intestines.
Right, everything.
Like, there's so many. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but it was just getting worse. So finally, it gotten to the point in June at her last appointment, I had said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get a second opinion because she's suffering at this point. It's a stressor in our family.
Yeah.
You don't know what to do. You're not willing to further investigate. They said they called the actual hospital, the main hospital, the GI department, to figure out what was going on. And they just said, give her more of a stool softener. So I was like, they have no intention on treating the issue.
Give her a stool softener.
But they did give us high-calorie formula that they wanted me to mix into her food.
Of course.
So she was projectile vomiting that. We're giving her the stool softener. I'm putting something in her butt for her to go. So I was like, y'all are not giving her system a chance to like.
Right, to grow
Yes.
into everything that's changing and happening.
And she's getting worse. And before we got to the second hospital system, even though I had the referral in my hand saying they were okay with it, and she told us that she was fine with it, CPS was called and they were told that she was going to suffer a heart attack and die due to our negligence. And while we were at the hospital, a cop and the worker was at our door to take our children from us, based on what was said.
Honey, you.
So then what happened?
So we're at the hospital, and we were notified that DFS now had filed for custody.
Oh yeah.
So of course now at this point I'm like hysterical, I'm crying, I'm not understanding what's going on. We told them that we were going to take her to the hospital. You gave the recommendation. I just couldn't understand what was happening, and no one would give us paperwork.
And they're supposed
So
to.
the cop is there and he's just talking?
So the cop was at our house.
At our
Right. No, I get
We were
that.
at the hospital.
Did he give you any documentation at that point? He's just like, I'm so and so, and I'm here to say this.
We weren't home, thank God. We were at the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, so we
got
found
you.
out.
We left.
Just in time. It
Just
was
in
nothing
time.
but God. Because
We
if
was-
we were still home,
Yeah,
our
we was
kids
like,
would have
let's go. Let's just pack up. We went up there, and then as soon as we get there, 15 minutes, we're in the waiting room. We get that call, and they're at their house right now. I'm like, what?
And we called before we left to say, hey,
Yeah,
we're on our way,
yep.
we're going to get here at this time. So they
Right.
were expecting us, you know what I
Right.
mean? So I just didn't understand how we got from second opinion to filing for custody. So we did have, in fact, go to court, went to court. We found out that they filed because they said we weren't seeking hospitalization, but she was in the hospital during,
They're using those, you leaving against you. They're using the.
Do you have any? I mean, why do you think this was happening? I mean, I could give you reasons, but like, why do you think this was happening? Like, what do you attribute it to? Like,
They knew if we went to that second hospital system, we would have a malpractice case. So they were trying to prevent us from getting there.
Because
okay,
that baby at that point.
okay,
She was dying.
okay.
Oh,
She was literally dying, and every day we were living with the fact that this girl is going to die, and we're going to jail for her death because nobody is listening. I was calling like urgent care centers to see if they can do something. Nobody dealt with pediatric patients. I was calling my mom, who's a nurse, so she's disimpacting her.
Yeah.
Like I just felt so helpless, and I'm like, she is going to die,
And AI is like the
That's
like,
the
so
yeah,
once you
the-
like, where else do you go to at a
Ex-
certain point?
Exactly.
Literally,
Where
right?
else do you go? And you're not willing to help. The only thing you're willing to do is call CPS.
Right.
so you get to
Gotcha.
court, and what happens in court?
We were only given like 5 minutes to speak, and they already had in their minds that we were guilty.
Oh,
Literally, like I remember afterwards, my dad said to me, like, Shauna, I knew this wasn't going to go well. The way the judge was looking at you and discussed, like, who was she, and
oh.
Especially when you ran down your background, it put a disgust in her face. It was.
You mean like
no
you
other.
being educated.
Yeah.
That was a problem?
From what they were saying,
It looked like it hurt her more than it helped us than anything. So.
Because they surely did bang that gavel, and they were like, foster care. And we had, our family there and this, and I'm just like,
And you had support.
Yeah, we had great
the whole
support
time
system.
you had your mother, who's a nurse. You had your father. Like, you had 2 other healthy children in the home with no issues. Both of you were working.
So, did someone take the child? Like, how, what?
Thank God, no.
Okay.
Immediately after the hearing, someone called and said that we wouldn't have something called a TPR when they would figure out, like, if she could go with family or something like that.
Right.
But she was still in the hospital. So basically, they were keeping her at the hospital to figure out where she would go because we still had to go through another court hearing.
That's disgusting.
Were you able to see her in the hospital?
Yeah.
We could. So we were bedside the entire time. We didn't leave her side. She was there for 10 days. But it was just it was an eerie feeling. Like,
I can't imagine.
They're watching.
Yeah, they
they're
were
watching
watching.
you. They're waiting for you to.
yeah, and we had no say because she was still under DFS custody.
So you couldn't make medical decisions.
Oh my God.
So they didn't put her in foster care, but she remained under DFS custody, and they said she could later be discharged to home, but she was still under their custody. So she still had to follow through with weekly appointments at the second hospital system. DFS will call after every appointment. So now it's like if anything goes wrong,
Right. It's on you.
yeah, because
Right.
they did in fact find that she had a fecal impaction at the other hospital.
I mean, we knew that.
Like, I'm not like, so, I mean, tell me to shut up if I need to, but like, the fact that I have seen you go through that,
And
I couldn't be less of a doctor. I'm thinking in my head the whole time that's what this is. And for me to be the opposite of a professional, I've never worked with, like zero. For me to be able to put that together,
Right.
and for that to be what it was,
Right.
that is insane.
So for the people, Jay is referring to, I don't know when it was, not 2 months ago?
About 2 months at the most.
Yara was in the hospital for 6 days because she had a fecal impaction.
It was the same thing.
It was the same exact
Wow.
thing.
Same exact thing.
Yara's had bowel issues since the NICU, and we have been working with our doctor constantly to go over this process, like how to get her, into regular bowel movements. So everything she's gone through, like taking her, checking in, enemas, all that, I've gone through with Yara. And Jay and Lisa were there to support us when I never left. I think I left one time, but I was with her every waking moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually happened right after I met you.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, I am not leaving her for
Sorry
nothing.
about that.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
But I literally was thinking that's what it was. And for there to not be anyone
Yeah.
to even try to put that together,
Yeah.
that is wild.
Like everything she told me, and then we go into the hospital, and I'm like, I'm not making a move. And I literally, there were days I don't think I ate till midnight.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason why it means so much that we tell the story because of what I've been through with my twins and recently with Yara, but also as a mom feeling helpless in situations where you should feel empowered. Like the doctors have always, and I'll say it, because a lot of the people know me in Delaware because of my vocal career, I get treated a little bit differently. And I've heard so many people complain about the doctors and the staff in the hospitals in Delaware.
I have too.
And it bothers me because I'm like, I have never, ever dealt with that. They've been nothing but wonderful and made me feel empowered. So to meet women and hear their stories of what they've gone through and are going through, it just is unbelievable to me, especially with this is the same exact thing.
Right.
So, at what point did they determine that it was a fecal impaction?
So immediately when we got the child, the first thing they
Like
said,
that quickly?
they said, has
Literally
anyone
that.
talked to you about Hirschsprung's disease? So we're like, no. So they were like already trying to investigate the source of the constipation. So they did a barium enema and inserted something in her butt. And I was like, what are those round things? And I was like, that's poop.
Yeah.
Her entire system is filled with poop.
Are you looking at
The actual X-ray.
Yeah. And you're like, that's what that is.
Yep.
Yeah, you can see it.
Like-
It was so much.
Go ahead.
It's crazy how little
That's what-
they are
Right.
and how much poop it is.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was like mounds, and I just couldn't believe it. So she was able to excrete most of it, and they took some of it out also. But don't you know, within 24 hours, sis was
weight.
crawling, she was pulling up, she was like
Laughing.
talking,
She was back to like cheerful.
Yep.
stuff
baby.
we've never seen.
That was
Yeah,
like
she-
yard. That last
That's
day.
what I'm tripping right
I'm
now. From my end, I'm like, it's like
We're
I'm
gonna
tripping
post a
because that
picture.
is exactly what this was.
I
Wow.
sent a picture to them, and she was up there eating waffles,
Yeah.
bacon,
Yes.
potatoes. She
Yes.
wasn't
She
playing.
looked like a
Yeah.
baby. Like she really looked like a baby. Like before all that, she was stiff as a board, and then she was bending, crawling, hands on her hands,
She was
hands on her
drinking from a
feet.
bottle because she stopped drinking from a bottle. She couldn't. After, I think April 30th was the last time
Yeah,
she's
she
ever
stopped
drank from a
drinking from a
bottle.
bottle.
Like she was doing everything.
So they figured this out, and now what happens next?
So she then had to get on a feeding tube because she was so
Sure.
behind. She was the size of a 6-week-old infant at almost 1 year old.
Oh my
So,
God.
Yes, it was like, oh my God, like I just didn't know. And she had to feed on that every 3 hours, but they said either with your breast milk or formula. So they did test my breast milk to see whether or not I had enough calories, which
Sure.
the other hospital never did. And sure enough, I had enough calories.
Right.
So the
What's
first,
the new hospital?
CHOP.
Chop.
Okay.
Philadelphia.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you by any chance? No, you wouldn't have worked because my cousin's a doc at CHOP, but she works with obesity, so that wouldn't be it.
okay.
But I would have been great. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, totally different experience. So her first feeding that she had, she didn't have to get on the tube. She was able to take everything in by mouth after they cleared the impaction.
Of course, girl was like, all right, let's eat.
Yeah, she was
Right.
ready to-
Crab
she was
legs.
ready to get
Yes,
it.
she was. She was. So that's why I was like, at Nemours, how can you jump to an intervention and you're seeing what's going on? We're feeding her and she's vomiting. She's not able to absorb anything. So imagine if they gave her that feeding tube before they cleared the impaction. She would have probably aspirated and died because we were already seeing the
It's
results
really
of this.
interesting. Like when you answered that question, why do you think that you found yourself in that situation? And I don't know, obviously, but what you said makes perfect sense. That they were covering their asses.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I
It just makes sense.
I started this interview off with mentioning the former American Idol contestant who went through the same thing as far as legal kidnapping. And one note that was made in their story was that they were collecting stories of other women of color who were going through the exact same thing. That's not to say that white women don't go through this, but there is a large amount of women of color who are going through this, like, and it's out of this world. And the reasoning behind it don't make sense. Women are still fighting for their children. Some women are in jail because of false accusations. And right now, the Miltons actually, you guys you're in a lawsuit, right?
We are.
Currently with Nemours. And you started a nonprofit.
Yes, so another mom reached out to me saying that I kind of encouraged her to come out with her story because she's been fighting for 7 years in the state of North Carolina. So we started something called Me Too, Stop CPS, and we're collecting the stories of various moms that have gone through the same thing I've gone through. And it's crazy because like the underlying story is basically the same. It
What
starts
is that
with-
story?
Starts with like feeding issues. We're saying, hey, our child is sick. Can you do X, Y, and Z? And the doctors just swoop in and take the children.
Right.
But the difference is that out of all these moms that I've connected with, and it's a large number, we're the only ones that have our children. They've either been adopted out, completely rights terminated.
Oh.
Do you think that might be because of your education and background, or what do you think that is for? Is it maybe Delaware is not as ridiculous, or why do you think that might be?
I think, to be honest, that may be true. As I was able to foresee it before it got to that point, and I
Yeah.
started my own documenting, whereas the other ones, it just kind of
Yeah.
just happened.
Right.
And
So for some, for with your group and for all of the people who might be in that situation, like what would how would you guide them through that situation once you realize that is the boat you're in? Like, what would you say to someone who's trying to navigate that?
document.
Listen.
Yeah.
So your after visit summaries that you get from the doctor, that's not what they're actually writing in the medical records. So you need to request a copy of their medical records because
Yep.
you'll see their true notes.
Yep.
Ah.
Yeah.
I requested copies of my full workup when I was in the hospital with the twins because I was like, I went through hell. I
Right.
want to know what was going on.
Exactly.
And it was, ooh, baby.
Yes, it is. But you have got to read it.
Yes.
Because let me tell you, when I was reading that, I was like, is this me? Us we're talking
I
about?
didn't think it was us. I thought
Even
it was another chart.
yeah.
Well, what kind of stuff? Like, so what did you see in those reports that was like, how could this possibly be me? Like, what were the alarming things that you read? You know what I mean?
Was saying that we were non-compliant, we were aggressive, we were cumbersome, we had a lack of concern. They were talking to us about one thing, we were just kind of like blowing it off, like, oh, it's not that serious. It was to the point at CHOP, every time someone would meet us, they were like, we were expecting somebody else. You're nothing like what we read in the record. Like, and a medical assistant even said to us, like, we were told not to talk to you guys at all because legal was involved. So literally we were there and we didn't know what was going on. It was just like,
and they can see the records
Right.
from CHOP, from
No, I got you. I understand.
so I kept saying, like, what you see on paper is far worse than the actual situation. Like, you need to get to know us first before you make a judgment.
And what's so funny about that is, like, this is just how my brain works, is like, you know, if the patient wielded all the power, you would have had on your record saying pretty much that about them.
Right.
Like, I came here for this, they're
Right.
not taking this seriously, they have a bad attitude,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
So do you have custody now?
We
Yes.
do.
Okay, and when did that change?
And how did that change?
Yeah.
I remember this to this day. So she had an appointment on July 18th with the nutritionist.
I feel like we should get cake for this moment. I'm so happy.
I know, right? And the nutritionist was like, excuse me, she was like, I'm so sorry you guys went through this. Like, you know, she's gaining weight like 3 times more than someone her age. Like, I have no concerns with you guys. She was like, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never seen anything like this before. You guys clearly don't even look like, y'all shouldn't be in this situation. Like, I just can't believe it. So I said to her, I was like, well, we still have to go to court the next day to figure out, 1, if they're going to substantiate the claim and charge us with child abuse, and 2, where our kids are going to go.
Oh my God.
So she was floored.
Right.
And people, a nurse had said to us, like, whoever did this to you guys at Nemours, they need to pay because there is.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. So they were, on our side. So after I left that appointment, our lawyer called and said, I have good news. DFS backed down and dropped all charges.
I bet they did.
I bet
So I was
they
like,
did.
thank you, Jesus.
Yes.
And he was like, and there's no stipulations, there's no supervision or anything. He was like, I've never seen this before where they don't have any, dealings with the family. So
I mean,
was
based off of everything I'm hearing, like it was literally their mistake. And
Right.
I mean, again, based off of what you're telling me, there's every reason to say that they made the problem worse for months
Yeah.
on end and put
Yeah.
the child at serious risk
They need to be charged
by
with child
not
endangerment.
figuring out what the problem was.
Right.
It's kind of insane.
It was, and to be quite honest, it probably would have continued if I didn't have those notes. So I had 60 pages of my own documentation.
Wow.
Literally, on this day we spoke with this doctor. I had their names, phone numbers. I had everything to a T.
I hope
And
y'all listening.
yes, you have got to document everything because they are. And if you don't document it, it doesn't happen.
Right.
But don't you think, like, I mean, another part of this lesson is like, I almost feel like even if things are going right, still document.
Still.
Yeah.
Even if it's a perfect
Yup.
appointment, like, because you
Still.
don't know when things
Yup.
are going to turn, and you want to
Yeah.
have a track record up until, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But it's like, even if everything is going right, document, right?
Because unfortunately, I mean, they have the authority. They're going to believe the doctors before you.
Right.
Yeah.
So I handed that to her child advocate and was like, maybe this will help you understand our situation. And that's when things started to turn around.
Yeah.
Because before it was just like, we were just moving through the system.
That is something that I need people to hear, young ladies especially, because I feel like there are so many young women who have issues at the hospital with their children and with themselves that don't realize that there is a patient advocate in every hospital.
Yes.
So if you don't know, you know now, and familiarize yourself with those people when you get there immediately.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because there's some saving, let me tell you, they be bringing in toys, coffee.
Yeah.
You need them. So look for patient advocates, please.
Yeah.
How's the baby now?
Our family is like, they call it the miracle baby because we don't even know Bradley. They literally took 2 years of our life because she is completely different.
Oh my God.
Personality. We're like, who is this kid? She has no fear. Like, she
Of
loves
course.
to eat. Oh my God.
What's her favorite food?
Pizza.
Pizza or anything pasta based.
But she don't play. She gets upset. Like if you're giving her something and she wants more and she feels like she can't have it.
Like, yo, I missed these months, son.
Yes.
You have to come off of that, son. Like, we're not doing this again.
Yes. One time we got a call from the daycare and they're like, I don't understand, her thing with food. Like she gets really upset if we don't give her seconds because nobody knew that we were going through this.
Right. You gonna come in with a black eye one day,
right?
Give her more pasta.
I told you.
So, how, as a married couple, young married couple, how long were you married before you guys had babies?
How long were we married? Was it 2 years?
Before we had babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know. They've been
I'm
around for
I'm
life.
thinking about all
Listen, once you have kids,
Right,
everything is a
yeah.
blur. I don't know. I woke up and I had a family. I don't know when it started, how it started. I don't know that date. What are you talking about?
I asked because it's beautiful to see young married couples, right?
It is.
Young married couples with families.
Yes.
And when you go through something in a marriage as difficult as this, there's so much to learn about yourself, but also in the union. So, two questions. How did you guys lean on each other? And what would you say to young couples who are going through some things right now or have been through some things and, how they can get through it? Whether with kids or without.
Well, personally speaking, you probably chime in. I feel like you need to be grounded in something, meaning we believe in God, we're Christians, and if it wasn't for God, we would not be here together. I probably wouldn't be here at all. Like literally seeking Him first, asking for Him to guide our steps, giving us strength, because that was, and it's still the toughest thing to date that we have to endure.
Yeah, it was times where we didn't even want to go to church. It was like, let's just get up and get this word that we about to get to receive, but also just being there for each other. We had to be there for each other. As you see, she gets upset sometimes, but I'm always there to cool her down, help her out, blend out the situation. But we had each other's back, though. We definitely had each other's back through that whole situation, that whole time. It was.
Yeah, you definitely did, because I ain't gonna hold you. Like it almost took me out.
Yeah.
And when he was saying like not going to church, that's because I developed like a fear of leaving the house. I wasn't eating at all, and by this point I was pregnant with our third, so it was
Wow.
Oh my God.
I was just existing. Like I would literally just wake up and just be in the bed. I don't even remember anything from that pregnancy, or because I was a zombie.
Yeah.
And I had to lean on him, and at times I would get upset. Because I'm looking at him like, how is he handling this so well? And I'm struggling, like, emotionally. I'm thinking about committing suicide. At one point, I was just like, you know what? They think they can take care of our children. I'm just going to go ahead and let them do it because I don't have any more like, I'm trying to live. I don't have any more fight.
Right.
But...
Yo, good job, dude.
He did. He did.
Look at him, man.
He did.
No, but I had to step in.
No, respect, dude.
So what were you going through mentally?
With me, I didn't want to show everything on the surface. So you know what I mean. I couldn't show that to her.
Yeah.
I didn't want. If we both breaking down, who's gonna help us both now?
Yeah.
So I had to be strong as the best way I could. Everything that I gave was all to her. So she had it, and she was good though. She was.
Look at him talking that stuff. You like,
well done, sir.
I can't take credit.
No, dude. Well done,
He
sir.
really
I mean
is.
that from here. Like, respect.
I really do appreciate that.
You really did. Because he even made us go back to church. I was in therapy every week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I was just not, I had lost 30 pounds. And they were like, you have got to get it together. You're pregnant. And I was like, I don't have the will to live. Like, I can't think about this baby. I just can't. And then I was just mad at God. Like, why would you bless us with this baby? And we're going through this. I'm not strong enough.
Right.
So.
But you are.
Yes. Won't he do it? Okay.
But you are.
I told her every day. That see, like
he did.
You
but
got
it was
this.
that day when you said the therapist was like, "Well, what do you think she needs?" Because you were saying it took me forever to do like the smallest thing. Like I was real irritable. I wasn't myself, and he said, "I know what she needs." So I knew what he meant in that moment, but I was like, I ain't trying to hear that because we go to a large church. And
What
I'm like,
church do you go to?
Seeds of Greatness. Shout out to
Seeds of Greatness.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's like, I ain't going there. He know I don't leave the house. There's too many people. So that next day, he was like, all right, girl, we going to church. So I was looking at him like, who?
Like, boy.
Okay. And he sure did. And from that point, every time we went, I was getting stronger and stronger. I would have a severe panic attack in the car.
Yeah.
Brad would be vomiting in the parking lot and all that, but he still was like, no, we going to church. And our pastor, it felt like he was speaking to us every time we went.
Yeah.
And I was just getting stronger and stronger. So that was
No, you
him.
did it. No, you got that.
And where are you guys now?
We can laugh.
No, I'm genuinely.
Jay don't get emotional, but
No,
like,
as a man, I can't offer you more respect for being able to do that because everyone couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And I don't like. I'm not. I just have a tremendous amount of respect for you being able to lead your family through that spiritually,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
to put that on your
without
shoulders.
cracking heads. Let
Yeah,
me
man.
tell you.
Yeah.
Right.
It was
Lord.
close.
It
I'm not
was
gonna
close.
lie.
Yeah, of course it was, but respect, man.
It was
Listen,
close,
he ain't got
but-
them braids for nothing,
Okay,
baby.
right. Look, my family from Philly, they was with it. My dad was like, come on, let's go. And I was like, wait a minute now. Come on now. We're
Yeah.
Christians, can't do
But
that.
my
we
God.
Jesus turned over the table.
I know.
No, I'm playing.
He carried that cross. Wait a minute, he got hands. He carried that cross up the hill. Okay?
But we did it. We got
You
through
did
that.
it.
Yeah.
And you have 3 beautiful,
Mhm.
loving babies. You have
Thank
a
you.
beautiful marriage. You're beautiful people. And you have a story and a testimony. And you're opening up. I'm thankful that you reached out, but I think I'm even more thankful at the fact that you are stepping up because so many people go through things that they hide from, you know, and when people like you step up and tell your story, it gives strength to others to maybe not even be in the limelight, but just to fight for themselves, you know. So I definitely, I'm speaking to my sisters because I'm a sister, but take this as a sign that you have to stand up for yourself. Don't, if you feel like something's wrong medically, get a second opinion. If you need some help for your baby, get a second opinion. Reach
Yes.
out to someone. If your partner is not supportive and is stressing you out, get some help somewhere.
Yes.
Because we only have us. And thankfully, you have a partner that you were able to lean on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and men, be there. Be
Yes.
that rock. But if you need somebody to lean on, look at your lady.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and ask questions because
Right.
don't put it all on the moms. Like even my husband will be like, okay, can you explain that again? Because my wife is going to ask me.
Right.
That definitely-
Okay, so
definitely
just break that down, put it in the notes. But I'm so thankful to be able to meet you guys
Yeah.
Thank you
and
for
to
having
tell
us.
this story.
Yes, thank you.
And I pray that y'all get some money.
But
But in all seriousness, like, how do we? Like, I know you have the organization that you're working with and putting that together, but like, genuinely, how do you think, we can change this problem and kind of stop it from happening? Like, we don't, obviously nobody wants this to happen to anybody else, and I know that's why you're telling the story and why you put the organization together, but like, what else do you think we can do to prevent these kinds of absurd things from happening?
Well, first off, by talking about it, like
Right,
there's
Yeah.
other
right.
stories in Delaware. While we were going through it, it happened to another family, but their child actually died.
Oh,
And
sweet Jesus.
of course, the Moors just paid them out, so they can't talk about it. So a lot of this stuff happens, but you don't hear about it. So having these conversations, bringing awareness to it. But then we need to think about legislation.
Yeah.
Because we have, DFS, everybody thinks of, the child who is being abused or they don't have a home. So you're thinking, oh, okay, well, this is what it's set up for. But when you think about it, does it truly make sense? So, okay, say, for instance, the child is suffering, right? So you're going to take the child from their setting, their natural environment, to give that child to someone else and then give that other family resources. Shouldn't it be the other way around?
It's probably a bit of both, because I've seen some terrible cases, but I totally know
Yeah.
what you mean. Yeah.
Well, would you be open if people have questions?
Sure.
Yeah. So if you're watching and there's something that we didn't ask or something that pops up in your mind, you can comment on the video. I will have them tagged so you can reach out to them. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Look, God called me to do this. I didn't want to. He kept saying, "Come on, you got to
Come
talk
on,
about
girl.
this," and I'm like,
Girl,
"You
get
know, I
up."
don't like talking in front of people. I don't like being in the limelight, but."
No.
Yeah, my testimony's here, or our testimony. Sorry, baby.
Yeah.
It's
He's still cool. He's still
Right.
We
So
good.
reach out to me, definitely, yes. And I'm excited for change.
yes.
I am.
Yes.
I'm excited for change. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching. We love you for watching. And again,
Yes, first thing.
reach out to us if you have any questions. Reach out to her if you have any questions. And stay tuned for what's next because I
Yes.
see big things in her future for these kids.
It's coming. Stay tuned.
Thank you.